What's going on, fellow Helldivers? Today we're going to be going over some of the very best unlocks in the game to make you feel extremely powerful, and the best ones I believe you should unlock for your stratagems. These will help you tear through the missions and ultimately will help you level up and get through the content a lot easier than if you didn't have them. So strap in, we'll be going over the very best stratagems that you should unlock as you play. So coming in at number 10, and although this isn't an offensive one, it's just going to keep you alive, but it's really worth knowing because later on, at highest difficulties, this can be an absolute game changer, and that's going to be your shield generator pack. This, I found, can keep me alive. It's amazing for those automaton missions because of how much firefighting's going on. Sometimes you can get hit by a stray bullet and it will just absolutely knock you for 6. I've seen this thing deflect bullets. It's deflected some melee hits that should have absolutely decimated me. From what I can tell, it also stops stagger and things such as that when you're on the terminated missions, and even when it's down, it regens very fast. I'd say this is probably an almost essential pick for most missions late game, especially if you're going up against those automatons on the impossible and helldive missions, as it's just going to keep you alive than pretty much anything else in the game. This, mixed with a nice amount of stims and some self-awareness of the danger, can really help you to fly through those toughest missions a lot easier than you would have previously. Over to one of the very best early unlocks, and one that you can use all the way through the game, and that's going to be the Expendable AntiTank ammo. This one unlocks very early on. It's great for beginner or intermediate players to put on, as it's going to give them a fighting chance against some of the tougher enemies that you're going to be facing. It's also really low on its cooldown, so it's great for giving to team members who can pick them up when you call them down. You're going to have 2 each time you call it down, and it takes out smaller and medium targets very well. The cooldown is definitely the icing on the cake in my opinion, as it gives you around about 90 seconds before you can use the next one. So on your missions you can have loads of these up with your encounters, between 5 to 8 times every single mission. Absolutely amazing, and definitely something well worth investing on early on in the game, because it's one of the only things you can get very early that can take down some of the medium and tougher enemies. Next up, and we have an absolute workhorse, one that is amazing on a lot of missions, but mostly I'd say this is probably for your defense missions, especially on the automaton side. Clears groups of enemies very fast, it's got some massive range to it, it's great for almost any target as it's going to tackle some of the bigger targets and damage them as well, allowing for some easy cleanup. You just got to make sure you put it a little bit out of the way because it can get damaged very quick by chargers or anything focused firing on it, and then you're just not going to get the most benefit from it. This works really well in a team. It also works well solo in the right place, and I'd say if you can, try and put it up a little bit higher or in a little bit out of the way place to make sure you get the most from those artillery shells. But once you have this in place, you're going to easily take out a lot of enemies very fast, and even if you don't destroy some of the tougher ones, it's going to do a bit of damage to them, helping your team to take them down with some other weapons or some other stratagems. Over to what in my opinion is one of the most fun stratagems in the game, and that's going to be the Orbital Laser. This thing is an absolute beast. If you want to bombard your enemies from a distance, this laser is going to come straight from the ship above you and it's going to absolutely tear through your enemies. It's a consistent amount of damage, quite high damage, but I'd kind of say it's focus fire damage over time, where the laser just tracks things and then keeps hitting them continuously until it takes them down. The great thing about this, it can last an awful long time, especially with the right upgrades, and it's going to completely tear through those small targets, going to do great work on those medium targets, and it can also put in some nice work against the larger targets as well. I found this is probably best against the Terminids overall, but it actually works amazing against automatons as well. The only bad thing about this, it does have some high cooldown, so you won't be bringing it in loads and loads throughout those missions, but when you do, it will definitely be worth it. Just make sure there's a lot of enemies around, as you don't want to waste those uses. Over to another absolutely amazing backpack choice, and this one's going to be the Dog Rover. I found this to be slightly better. I found this, the laser version, a little bit better than the one that just shoots normal bullets, and it can really help you out to track enemies, especially those invisible ones, as the weapon on your back still turns to face them, so sometimes this can be a real lifesaver. It's really good for taking out some of the small bugs, it's going to clear them easily, and if you've got a nice shotgun in play as well, such as a breaker, you can tackle enemies with this and take them down very fast. And perfect for anyone that likes to go through missions with an extra little bit of damage constantly on their side. I have found, unfortunately though, if you die very often in this game, there's probably going to be some better choices, as this one tends to get picked up by your allies very often, and when it does, you're not able to pick it back up again obviously, so you've got to wait for that cooldown, which is actually pretty high. I believe it's around about 480 seconds. But overall, this is a solid pick all round, a great backpack option, and can really help you to clear through the content nice. Coming in at number 5, and if you are after a complete nuke of a stratagem, something that's going to one-shot even the biggest, baddest enemies, then the Eagle 500 kilogram bomb is going to be the one for you. This thing is just a whole lot of fun to play with. Honestly, if you want an I want that thing gone button, you're going to want to chuck this stratagem on. It can take out some of the biggest enemies around, it can take out titans, it can take out tanks, it can take out whole areas. It hasn't got quite as much range as you'd actually think, it hasn't probably got like the range of a cluster bomb, but as long as you're able to place it well, it can really do the job amazing. I've honestly had a lot of fun with this and found it one of the best items in the game. The only thing I would say with a bit of a downside, as you start going really into the higher tiers such as the Helldive, it seems to be a little bit hit and miss. Sometimes I've one-shot some of the toughest enemies like the Bile Titans, other times it seems to take a couple of them, and if they move out of the way of it, it may even take 2 with some other stratagems as well. It can definitely be a little bit hit and miss, and that's why I haven't put it higher up the list unfortunately. I think it might need a tiny little buff just to make this do exactly what you're after it to do, and ultimately I'd probably say wait until you've got the upgrade for the ship that allows you to get it back a little bit sooner and have one more in play before you start making this a regular in your kit. But if you're after just a single big boom stratagem, then there's no better choice than this one right here. Now coming in at number 4, and I've been a bit cheeky on this one as I've chucked 2 into it, but they both do very similar jobs, they're just aiming towards slightly different targets. You're going to have the Autocannon and the Gatling Sentry. These are ideal if you like to get a lot of damage out, you like to take enemies, you like to be standing still or in an area, and they probably shine best on defense missions or any missions where you're going to be holding down a position. The autocannons actually do a really nice amount of damage. I didn't realise how good they were until I started using them a bit more often. They're great for taking out and knocking around things such as chargers, and they do some really nice heavy damage as well as a little bit of stagger from what I can tell. Obviously they're slower firing pace, so they're not going to be the best for tackling large groups of those smaller enemies, but that's where the other Gatling Sentry will absolutely shine. This is ideal probably on the bug missions, clearing out waves of the smaller ones absolutely easy, and as long as you've got them in really nice positions, they can handle a lot of enemies before they've got anywhere near to you. The only thing with these, they do take a little while to deploy, so you do need to place them in a timely manner, and also putting them in the right place is a thing you're going to have to get used to. If you put them near the enemies, they are actually quite squishy, and you have to be a bit careful with them taking down before they can actually dish out the damage you're after. Now heading into the top 3 positions, this one I wasn't even entirely sure where to put this, but I think probably ranked 3rd is about right. It's going to be the Eagle Cluster Bomb. This is an absolute savage stratagem that probably does one of the most AoE in the game. It is very large, and clearing out small enemies, this is one of the best ones in the game. Anytime you're overwhelmed, anytime you've got a lot of enemies near you or in a pack, you're going to call this in and it's going to just completely cluster bomb and destroy everything in the area. I say everything, but ultimately it won't tackle some of the tougher medium enemies, but anything else it will clear them, and it will definitely do some damage to some of the tougher enemies. I found this to be absolutely essential when I'm going to missions like destroying those eggs, and because you get more uses on this than any of the other Eagle stratagems, it means you're going to have a lot more uptime with this than anything else you'll probably be picking. Whilst it is amazing though for clearing out enemies, it also does come with some drawbacks, like the fact that it has such a big AoE, you need to make sure you don't throw it anywhere near yourself or anywhere near a teammate, as you could quite easily see casualties popping up very often. The other thing, it doesn't seem to take out factories or nests, so it's not going to be ideal on every mission, but because of how many uses and because of how good it is for clearing enemies, I'd say it's definitely a viable option to take alongside a lot of other stratagems at any stage in the game. Now over to my number 2 pick, and this one was going to be number 1, but I've settled on it being number 2, and that's going to be the railgun. This does amazing damage, it really does. I'd say it does medium to high damage, and I always find that when myself or a couple of people in my group have this, we just manage to get through the missions a lot easier. It does as well go through armour, but don't let that fool you. It doesn't mean you should aim for things like chargers and just headshot them or go for their armour plates, because it's not going to go through that and completely take them out. However, you can knock out chargers' legs, then move around them and hit them in their weak spot once again to knock off either a massive amount of health or completely take them out. One great thing about this, just on its normal fire mode, is able to tackle almost anything other than the toughest enemies, and if you need a little bit more damage, you can overcharge it by turning it into its alternative fire, which you do by holding down the reload button, and then you're going to be able to hold it, completely charge it up and take things down with even more damage. The only problem with this, if you don't time it right and you hold onto it for too long, you're going to feel the full fury of the weapon as it completely explodes and takes you with it. A lot of fun to play with this. Honestly, put a few in your group and you'll make your life a whole bunch easier. Now lastly, coming in at our number 1 spot, and the reason I'm putting it into the number 1 slot is I find myself bringing this to almost every single mission I play. This is the real Swiss Army knife of the stratagems, and it's just absolutely amazing. That's going to be the Eagle Airstrike. Because it's unlocked a little bit earlier than some of the other stratagems, you may well have switched off of this, gone on to them, but trust me, try this again, it is just that good. It's explosive damage, it means you can clear through nests, you can take out whole objectives at a time, it's going to do some really good damage, a lot better than it probably should, and I tend to think of it as a slightly better, harder hitting cluster bomb. It hasn't got quite as much range, so it probably won't destroy quite as many small adds if there was a load there, for being able to clear through the content, for being able to just not destroy your friends quite as much because it isn't quite as big with the AoE, and just the fact that you can take it into every single mission. This one is just always worth unlocking and bringing with you whenever you can. Since I've purchased this, I don't think I've actually taken it off my stratagem bar because it is just that good. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you think there's anything I've missed off. I'm sure I've probably missed 1 or 2 because it was trying to be a top 10 list, but these will massively help you to clear through the content, and it will mean you probably won't spend as much resources unlocking things that aren't anywhere near as good. As always, there'll be a lot more content from me on the way, but for now, enjoy bringing liberty to the galaxy. As always, take care. I'll see you on the next day.